Morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We will be beginning the webinar shortly, just giving everyone a couple of minutes to join. So just bear with us here for another couple of minutes. Hello, everyone. I am pleased to be announcing today the webinar for how to avoid unwanted intrusions in your ERP. And with me, I have my co-host is Nathan Chan from OneLogin. Nathan, if you want to say a couple of words.
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Chan. I'm Manager of Partner Solutions with OneLogin. So I work on all of our partner integrations. I've been with OneLogin for about 6 years and looking forward to speaking with everybody today. Thanks.
And my name is Hennie Vermeulen. I am the CTO here at SafePaaS. And I will just go through a couple of housekeeping items. You will be on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the chat to post your questions. And then right at the end, we will have a Q&A session where our moderator will collate all the questions coming in from the chat, and we will gladly answer those questions for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chad.
Sure. So, let's take. Sorry, losing my voice. So I wanted to introduce OneLogin today, and one of the things about OneLogin that you should know about us, the three big numbers. We've got 2,500 plus customers, including Airbus, NASA, and Evernote. We've got over 300 plus team members. So we're based all over the world. We have 24/7 support with members across the globe. And in addition, we raised $175 million in capital. And all of this allows us to provide you with an infrastructure that can support your target systems. So OneLogin as a company, we're not going anywhere. We've raised a good amount of funding. We've got a great team to support everybody, and we've got a great customer base. So partnering with a company like SafePaaS is very natural for us because we can together the two solutions can do a lot of things. But also as a company, SafePaaS can feel comfortable that OneLogin as a company, we're a leader in the space, and we're also not going anywhere. You can go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. SafePaaS is a software risk management firm and we have significant experience across the application security landscape. These controls help our customers to minimize and mitigate their risk. And then we also have our CEO has written a book, co-authored, about the Governance, Risk and Compliance Handbook for Oracle Applications. We are also very active in a number of conferences, as you can see here. A number of them scattered across the world, some in Europe, some in UAE, and of course here in the US as well. We have a global presence, and we have a number of areas where we excel, and has, as a result, been recognized by Gartner as the most comprehensive governance, risk, and compliance solution on the market. We support multiple ERPs, and we can do cross-validation between different applications. That's really key, and we'll get into that a little bit later here as we dive into the technology stack a little deeper. The next slide here is just a very quick overview for everyone with regards to our benefits that we provide to our customers. Here's a couple of extracts, 6 customers that have, used specific areas where we excel. The first and foremost is advanced analytics. This is where we detect errors and waste and fraud in information systems. These errors and issues typically come from misconfigurations, also suspicious transactions and unauthorized master data changes that isn't always detected in real time. So Stanford University was in a good example where they were able to actually save a lot of money identifying waste and fraud, and having a much tighter control around their configuration and data changes. The next area here is cloud transformation. This is where access policy-based security design and automated configuration change management comes to the forefront. And Cosmos is our customer that has, one of the use cases. Next one is to control monitoring process workflow. So this is where we can actually embed business logic and with a workflow sitting behind it as a means to drive the actual process forward. And because of the workflow, it'll only go forward if there is an approval. Otherwise, obviously, it will stop that from happening. The next area of interest is identity governance. And this is where we do, your typical, I call them manual controls, things like access requests, your certifications, your auditing, your analytics. And so with IDM lifecycle-based aggregation and correlation, we're able to, govern that access at a fine-grain level. Data protection. This is where we are able to actually enhance data privacy and security and comply with all the various nuances of the regulatory bodies out there, most notably GDPR, PII and HIPAA, and many more. The last area where we excel is audit, risk, and compliance. And this is really where we provide an enterprise risk management framework and allow for compliance with COSO using various standardized and collaborative approaches. This slide just shows you the landscape of some of our customers. And, you can note here that we span multiple verticals. There's no vertical that we are not present in currently. And if you are interested in any specific case studies, I could definitely put you in touch with our marketing folks, and they can provide whatever details you would need. We have approximately 250 customers across all of these major segments, and we are growing at a rapid pace at the moment. We also embrace partnerships, OneLogin being one of many partners that we integrate with. And so we welcome working with our partners because that's how we provide a much better return on investment for our customers in being able to, bridge that gap for them. Nathan, I think it's back to you.
Not yet. I think this one is actually SafePaaS, actually.
This is. I thought this was your slide. I'm sorry. Yes, data breaches. Here we go. So what this depicts is just a growing trend, all right, in terms of data breaches. If we look over the last 10 plus years, what we will notice is that there is a increasing number of data breaches, and these are just the publicly known ones, right? We're not even talking about the companies that have data breaches that they don't even know about. So if you take this in consideration, you're looking at a significant growth here, 2005 to 2015, 700% here. So that's huge. The other thing to notice is that we have actually improved the capability of identifying the time lapse between when the event occurs and when it is being exposed. You can tell here is certain areas like 2009, it took a very long time, right, for these records to get exposed, and there's a lot of them as well. I will turn over to you then, Nathan, on the access management across your business with OneLogin.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Hennie. So we learned a little bit about some of the business challenges that we see out there. Hennie's gone over a little bit about SafePaaS, and I want to connect it back to the data breach issue. It affects everybody. It could happen in any application. So whether it's an ERP system where your most sensitive data lies, or whether it's in an application that you might not even be thinking of that may be used only by a few people, there's corporate data in every application. So that's why we partnered with SafePaaS, because there's a way to cover your most sensitive data. And then OneLogin here, as you can see from this chart, provides you a great solution to cover your broad customer or your broad application base. It starts with taking all your different types of users. So when you think about OneLogin, the first thing that we ask you is, who wants to sign into the different things? Who wants to sign into the different applications? You've got users on one side and applications on the other. So users in OneLogin could be defined as employees. That's the most typical use case. You can also think of it as partners or even customers, because at the end of the day, different people, different types of people need to access different types of things. And when you use a tool like OneLogin, you're getting all the reporting, you're getting identity and lifecycle management, but more importantly, you're getting single sign-on and authentication and two-factor authentication as well. All of that combines together to target both cloud and on-premise applications. And that's the most important side of things, because when you get everybody into OneLogin's cloud directory, you're able to control and manage all the different types of users in your directory. So different people can get access to different things. And as a result, you can say, great, Nathan has access to SharePoint, but Nathan does not have access to SAP. Or you can say something like, Nathan is in sales, so Nathan gets access to a set of applications that other people do not, and so forth. By combining all these different types of users together, you can aggregate your reporting. So when I've got employees and partners and customers all signing into corporate applications, I have one place to go to manage all my users, and I have one data system that I can analyze to see the different types of authentication events that different people are using. So I can quickly see different anomalies. For example, are people signing in from places that they're not supposed to? For example, signing in from North Korea or somewhere that you don't really want people to sign in from. All of that is possible because we're importing and aggregating all the users together, and we're connecting via one single point to all these different applications. Hennie, next slide, please. Cool. So when we think about applications, I want to break it down a little bit. I showed on the last slide, I showed both cloud and on-premise applications. And the reason why I wanted to show you that was because when we talk to OneLogin customers and we're talking about their environment, we see a lot of different things. We see new SaaS products. Maybe you're adopting Office 365 for the first time. Maybe you bought Jira or Confluence. Maybe you bought Salesforce. But at the same time, maybe you have SAP. Maybe you have PeopleSoft. Maybe you have applications that you've built yourself. The point of this is that every organization has lots of different applications, and unless you're a brand new company, it's very difficult to say I'm only using the cloud or I am only using one type of service. Typically, what happens is when you're at a company, you've got business processes that have gone on for probably since before you've been at the company. And as a result, those business processes have defined certain workflows and certain applications. And you need to use those different applications to run your business workflows. So things may be done in a certain .NET or Java application that was previously built, and that's the way it's done at the company. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What we do within OneLogin is we do this application audit, and we do this at the beginning, and we do it up front. And when we do this exercise, it really helps to crystallize what is being accessed. Because when you lay it out like this, you see that, hey, it's not just 4 applications that's driving what I'm looking for. It's 16, it's 20, it's 100. I'll give you an example. Some of our customers, they came to OneLogin and they said, hey, I'm using 10 applications and that's all I want to use OneLogin for. But after they started with OneLogin and after they started using it, then that 10x'd. It went to 100 applications. So there's a lot of different tools that are used in the company. Different people use different things, obviously. It's not to say that I have access to 10 or I have access to 100, but it is to say that when you do an application audit, you see that there's a lot of different tools that are in existence in an organization. Next slide, please. Great. You can go to the next slide after this. Yep. Cool. So I want to ask you a question, and I want to say, where are you on the application spectrum? When you think about your applications and what that environment looks like, think about what the different tools are that people are purchasing. Think about your company's, think about what you're looking at. So if you're a company and you're saying, hey, what is my policy? Am I only buying the cloud from now on? Many companies are going to that. Alternatively, you may look at this and say, hey, I still buy applications that I need to host in AWS. I still need to buy applications that I'm hosting in my own on-premise servers. I'm still using Oracle EBS, or I'm still using PeopleSoft or something similar. Either way, what we see, we call it a hybrid world. And we look at that as there's applications that are in the cloud and there's applications that are on-premise. Either are great tools for the job. They cover your business needs. We just say, hey, what are they? What do you want to access? Take the time to figure that out. And it connects back to what Hennie was saying earlier. When you know what's out there, you can better protect yourself. When we look at the data breach question, data breaches are increasing. And by knowing where the possible entry points are, you can better inform yourself to figure out, hey, what do I need to protect? What is important? Where are my risks? And where are my gaps? Hennie, could you go to the next slide, please? All right. So let's look at 3 challenges in this world, because every company, I'm sure, does a slide similar to this. In today's environment, it's not just computing that's done inside, computing is not just done inside the office when you're at a desktop that's chained, that's LANed in on the Ethernet. You're working everywhere on every type of device. You're using phones, you're using your computer at home, you're taking your laptop to the coffee shop. There's lots of different places where you can do your business workflows, and that's great. There's a great productivity enhancement that's gained from that. What you should know, though, from the IT side of things or from the security side of things is number one, anybody can sign in anywhere, and that's great for your employees, but that also means that anybody, anywhere can sign into your applications. So it may not be your employees that are attempting to sign in. It could be malicious hackers that are trying to get in, running brute force attacks. I can give you another one example is Office 365. Hackers come in and then they buy password lists, and then they start doing brute force attacks on a company's Office 365 environment, and it starts locking users out in Active Directory as a result. And things, there are lots of attacks very similar to that, because it's very easy for somebody to go out and purchase a password list and just try to hack into somebody's account as a result. Number one, so that's a security risk. Number two, on the productivity risk, it's great that anybody can work anywhere. At the same time, because anybody can work anywhere at any time, you as an IT person or a security person, you have to make sure that everything's up and running. So if you can't get everybody up and running, you can't keep that process very streamlined and very smooth, then what turns out happening is, hey, I'm trying, but it leads to a lot of work and a lot of burnout. Finally, on the last side, and think about it on the compliance front, there's so many applications, there's so many different areas that you're accessing, but if you don't know what's being accessed, if you don't know when it's being accessed, you don't know where it's being accessed from, then as a result, you don't really have an audit trail. And if there's no audit trail, then that also hurts you in the event of a possible data breach. Next slide, please. All right. So I want to give you an architecture of OneLogin over here. And if you think back to the previous wheel that I showed you earlier, let's simplify it a little bit. We have users coming into OneLogin. OneLogin's cloud directory comes in there. We have a lot of different features that allow you to separate out the different applications that a user has access to, whether it be in the cloud or whether it be on-premise. But the moral of the story is that you have one place to get to all these different tools. And that means that you have the audit ability, you've got the single sign-on, and you can better secure everything. So I want to go to the next slide, and I want to talk to you a little bit about 2 key features of OneLogin. One of the features is single sign-on, and this is one of the 2 takeaways that you should take about the OneLogin integration of SafePaaS. We've got one way to get into all your different applications, so all of them, regardless of where they lie. So if it's an application that you built in Oracle, if it's a cloud application like Box, they all exist in one place. You have one easy way to sign into all of them. That's one. Next slide, please, Hennie. The next one is 2-factor authentication. And when you apply 2-factor authentication, think about it this way. If the only way that I can sign into a tool like Office 365 is via OneLogin, that's great. So I have one password to get into Office 365. I have one password to get into PeopleSoft. I have one password to get into AWS. And that's fantastic. But then you might ask, hey, what happens if my password gets hacked? And that's where we say, hey, we've got 2-factor authentication for you. So when you use 2-factor at OneLogin, implicitly what that means is I am required to use 2-factor to get into OneLogin. Therefore, I have used 2-factor to get into any of the applications that are behind the OneLogin single sign-on portal. So I use 2-factor when I sign into Cisco. I use 2-factor when I sign into SAP. And this is an interesting tie-in over here, because if you've got MFA across all these applications, you are now able to provide 2 things for your end users. You've got single sign-on, so from the productivity standpoint, you've eliminated thousands of passwords because you've only got one, as opposed to having 1,000 or more. And in addition, you've got that extra security, because now users can confirm that they are who they say they are before you allow them to sign in. Next slide, Hennie. So I want to give you a hypothetical over here, and I want to talk to you about something very interesting that you can do using OneLogin. I talk a lot about centralizing where everybody the login flow, and when you do that, OneLogin can analyze a lot of different information about what you do when you sign in. So we can take all that contextual data, your network, your device fingerprint, your location, and we can feed it into our risk engine. So we can figure out, hey, is Nathan signing in? Is it too risky of a sign in? Or is it such that, hey, maybe Nathan, okay, maybe it looks okay, maybe Nathan always signs in from home. So you can determine based on your risk tolerance, you can figure out, all right, should Nathan be allowed to sign in? Should Nathan be offered MFA during sign in? Or should Nathan be blocked during the sign in flow? And that'll all feed in. And that's an interesting integration that you can do using OneLogin, and that's an interesting analysis that you can do using our service. So to summarize, OneLogin's product, it's a single sign-on tool. You can apply two-factor authentication to get into these different applications. And in addition, we are able to provide that broad level of support across your entire application base. So now I want to pass it back to Hennie, though, because it's important to cover your most important data, and Hennie will go over that. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, so the next we're going to delve into a little bit more around, the controls platform that SafePaaS offers and how we actually integrate with OneLogin to ensure that we cover your entire risk set. So as part of our platform, we've got a number of areas, most notably at the bottom, we have audit, risk, and compliance management. This is where we do your manual auditing type activities. Then above that, on the left-hand side, we've got access controls management. So this is typically where you would do your segregation of duty analysis, your roles management. You can do fine-grained IDM, which is the piece we're going to dig into a little bit more in detail. We further also have firefighter capability to allow customers to provision super user access to users on a limited time frame with approval, etc. To the right of that, we have our continuous controls monitoring. This is really where we monitor transactions, monitor configurations, as well as our application lifecycle management. One level up from that is process controls management. This is where we can actually assist with business process streamlining as such. Most notably, most organizations have some financial close process, and in most organizations, those processes typically tend to be very manual. So what we aim to do here is put some structure around it, as well as some controls to ensure that things are actually getting done. And then at the top level, we have our predictive analysis, which is our Safe Insight product. And what this allows us to do is to provide more analytics to our customers across our entire platform. To the left of this, we have our DataProbe integration services, and DataProbe is our mechanism for consuming data and pushing data out to customers. So it's a single hub that we use for those. So, looking a little bit deeper into application access controls management, this is where, like I said before, where we're going to do our, segregation of duty analysis. We've got multiple things that we can address there. We have exceptions, we have corrective actions. We also have fine-grained IDM. What that really means is it's not that we provide an IDM solution, but it is we provide a fine-grained access validation for IDMs. Right. So what happens in that case, and we'll get into that a little bit more deeper, is the request comes into SafePaaS, and we then perform a segregation of duty analysis on that, and then pass the information back. But like I said, we'll delve into that a little bit more. We've got our roles manager, and that is where we actually design roles and responsibilities. So we can actually provide a capability to you that allows you to see how those roles are going to look and behave. in the system through our simulation. iAccess, that is just the piece that manages the request coming in from the IDM. Firefighter, we mentioned already, that is just, providing that elevated privilege. We also, at that point in time, initiate an audit capture so that after the fact, after the firefighter access has been given to the specific resource, the access log of whatever they did in the ERP is sent through an approval workflow to, in most cases, it would be their manager to review and make sure that, nothing was done that was maybe unauthorized. So then we move into Access Monitor. This is really where we provision the user and provide that self-service process where we integrate with the IDM. Now, all of these elements that I've just covered under Application Access Controls Management is available to multiple ERPs. Like I said before, we cover a multitude of applications. We can even do cross applications. So in the event where you have, let's say you're using Workday for HR and you're using PeopleSoft for your financials as an example, we're able to do cross-platform analysis because there may be some things in Workday that, if the person has that access in Workday, they shouldn't have some other access in PeopleSoft. So we can actually bridge that gap, which is a very unique capability. There's no other vendor out there that actually does that. So in terms of the SafePaaS application architecture, we have essentially our secure transfer bus right in the middle of everything. On the right-hand side, we have our data probe integration services, including our REST services that we use to integrate with the various ERPs so that we can pull information, especially for cloud ERPs, because obviously on-prem solutions work a little bit different. You typically have access to the database, but when you're talking cloud, those things are normally locked down. So there has to be another way for us to access that. So that's what we use there. We've also got our IDM integration with a number of vendors. Obviously, OneLogin is the partner that we're working with very closely at the moment. Then in terms of the actual controls monitoring, there's a number of things that plays a role, right? So you first and foremost, you get your data coming in, you apply a bunch of rules to it, you capture the snapshot, you run it through the rules engine, and ultimately you end up getting some analytics that tells you where the problems are and you can further investigate. So moving right along, the first thing in terms of SafePaaS single sign-on is that we have integration using SAML 2.0. And this is how we would configure the integration with OneLogin. We have a configuration by company. The other thing to note also is SafePaaS is multi-tenant. So, because we're a cloud platform, it allows us to separate out the data and access points by company. So, and then within a company, you've got multiple environments that we can configure as well. So let's say you've got, 2 and 3 environments that you want to monitor at the same time, we can do that. So there's a couple of things that's important when you're doing single sign-on. There's a little bit of setup that is required on the actual application itself. And that's what we're seeing here on this screen. Then also, you have some configuration that is needed on the IDM side. So on OneLogin, you would have to then specify certain specific details so that the two applications can talk to each other. And so this allows for all of that to happen. So assuming that you've set it up in SafePaaS and you've set it up in OneLogin, the next thing that will happen from an end user perspective is when they log in, they will only log into OneLogin, right? If a user, for instance, enters the SafePaaS URL, what will happen is we will present them with a login screen and they would pick their company. Once they pick their company, we actually do a check on the back end to see does that company have SAML configured or enabled. If they do, we will redirect you to this login screen, which is the one login screen. But I think in most cases, users will know when they use an IDM like OneLogin that they need to log into OneLogin. That is their single point of entry. So, once the user logs in, they're going to be presented with a number of applications. They're going to click on the SafePaaS one, and the next thing is they're going to be logged into SafePaaS without them having to enter that second password. So, talking about iAccess user provisioning best practices, this is really where I think SafePaaS makes the difference, right? I mean, yes, we can do single sign-on with OneLogin, but where it really shines is in today's world. These multiple ERPs are very complicated. The security setup is pretty intense, and you will need to understand that security model to know whether certain accesses should be granted together or not. So, it is imperative that we provide that coverage to you, because otherwise you will be in a false sense of security, thinking that OneLogin has the ability, because of OneLogin providing that rule configuration, you will say, well, I've already done that configuration. The problem comes in that when you do it at a role level, the actual makeup of that security is much more complicated than that. I can, for instance, assign, let's say I've got a view-only role. I can go and assign in the ERP, I can go and assign much more higher privileged access that is actually not view-only. That actually allows me to create an invoice, as an example. And it would completely be masked and unknown to anyone using the role. So this is where SafePaaS makes the big differentiator, where we look at the access violation or access management from that very lowest layer that you would assign. So if I were to take Oracle eBusiness Suite as an example, in Oracle eBusiness Suite, the lowest level is a function. And so, yes, a user doesn't get granted directly access to that function. They get granted access to a role or responsibility, and that then is given access to a bunch of menus, which is given access to a bunch of forms, and then ultimately a form is mapped in terms of functionality to different functions. So there would be a function to, for instance, allow you to create a supplier versus another function that would allow you to view a supplier. So we look at that very lowest level, and then we tie it back to the user, and we give you an indication of how did that person get this access. So if there is a violation, what we're able to do is we're able to tell you this violation is as a result of whatever role is assigned to whatever menu, to whatever form, to whatever function ultimately. And so I think that is one of the major differences. And it almost, I think a lot of people don't fully understand that is important for them to govern. And so what we do is we use application access rules as a means to validate all of that information. We get a master list coming in from the ERP, and then we get the actual user request coming in from OneLogin. And then we put those things together and we say, okay, well, so what does this really mean? If this user wants to get AP manager as an example role, how does that translate into actual segregation of money? And so through that entire process, we will most likely find that the roles that has been defined is maybe not separated out enough so that we can provide that coverage. Talking about how do we actually integrate with the IDMs. So I mentioned already that we have a REST API that allows us to talk to the IDM solution. We also have a number of other ways that we can work with IDMs depending on what capability they have and what limitations they have. We can, for instance, do a proxy as well, where, if the IDM wants to just proxy that request over to us, we will then notify the IDM back to say, whatever the situation is, did we approve it? Was it rejected? What are the reasons? And so in that world, typically, you will have to have access to the three important areas, right? So most notably, the ERP itself, and then also whatever HR system is used for that employee entry system. In some organizations, they use LDAP for that capability. If they don't use, say, the IDM will also pull that from an employee master. And that's important that we pull from that same location so that there's a synced information between the two systems. So let's delve into the REST API just a little bit. So what does that mean? So REST API is really just a communication protocol set up between two cloud vendors. So in this case, we would get a request coming in from the IDM, and there would be communication back and forth between the IDM, in this case, OneLogin, and SafePaaS. And what that will do is ultimately we will send a request back confirming the status. Did the request get provisioned or did it get rejected? And so, everyone will know what happened to that specific request. This slide here is just a quick case study of one of our customers, Cosmos, that has had a rapid growth over the years, and they have selected to go to Oracle Cloud ERP to allow their scalable growth. So some of the challenges that they had is that their auditors required a full review of the ERP cloud roles to ensure that the risks were mitigated. And so part of the challenge they had is they were under the impression that, cloud ERP is already the roles that's there was good for them to use. They don't have to do anything. We came in, we did an analysis on those roles, and we actually indicated to them, unfortunately to them, that the out-of-the-box roles are not sufficient to meet their audit requirements. So we actually ended up having to go through an entire role redesign for them to ensure that they are compliant with their audit requirements. And so, just some results here on the right-hand side. We were able to turn that around within 3 days, giving them a complete view of where things are going on. And there was over 500 access and transaction configuration risks that was identified as a result of the new system. That concludes our webinar today, and I will turn it over to Emma, our moderator, and see if we have any questions that has come in.
Yes, hi, we do have a few questions. I think, Nathan, this one is for you. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what a hybrid cloud model means for an organization?
Yeah, definitely. So when we look at a hybrid cloud model, we're looking at the different applications that are in use in an organization. So if you're looking at an ERP type tool, maybe you've done the work and maybe you've been able to put it in the cloud, and that's great, or maybe in the data center. But you're looking at all the different applications that are in use in the environment. And some of those applications may be in the cloud, some of them may be on-premise. And that's what we look at with a hybrid model, because we know that you're not going to be using just cloud or just on-premise tools. You're going to be using tools that are across the board. My apologies. So anyways, in that hybrid cloud environment, you're using all these different applications. And when you think about a hybrid environment, you need something that can secure all the types of data and all the types of information that's going to be out there. So when we look at a hybrid cloud, we're thinking about your cloud and also your on-premise tools. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Nathan. Okay, next question. Hennie, I think this one could be for you. We've set up our roles in the IDM, so why is that not sufficient? Why do we need the fine-grained access management?
Yeah, so like I alluded during the webinar, the problem with roles is that it masks the actual ability of someone to do something, because the role itself is just a container. It has no meaning per se. So I can create a role that says AP Manager inquiry only, and then go into the ERP and assign, some higher privileged access, like for instance, the ability to create an invoice. And so unbeknownst to everyone in the organization, they would think that that individual only has inquiry capability. But the reality is that the user actually has this additional access that is completely masked by the role. And so this is where fine-grained access comes into play, is we're able to delve down to that lowest level, that function level in eBusiness Suite. And if it's SAP, it's T-code. Each ERP is a little bit different because their security model makeup is different. And we understand that, and we've accommodated for all of that. So we're able to identify that at the lowest level and actually and give an indication. And what we see from our customers is that in many cases they are surprised. When we give them the results, they're like, "But how is this possible? The role says it's inquiry only. How did this person get this access?" And we're like, "Well, at some point or another, someone assigned this access to the role." And so it's a big eye opener, I think, for a lot of organizations, because trying to do access management at the lowest level using spreadsheets it's a daunting task. I mean, it's just not doable. It would take you the better part of a year to do that for most organizations. So what companies tend to do is just do segregation of duty at a role level, which is essentially what the IDM is doing for them in this provisioning process. And so they're not really fixing the problem, they're just masking it as if they were doing it manually, but now it's automated.
Okay, thanks for that, Hennie. Next question. Zero trust is a big buzzword these days, as we all know. So can OneLogin and SafePaaS help an organization adopt a zero trust infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think it's really interesting because when you look at all the different role management that you can do by using SafePaaS to cover your ERP system, and then you combine that with OneLogin, you get the best of both worlds. So you can figure out what exactly people have access to, and you can continuously evaluate that and ensure that the right access is there. And then in addition, with OneLogin, you can use our analytics tools to figure out, hey, is Nathan signing in from some place that he's not supposed to? And then you can turn around and make decisions based on that knowledge. So you can say, hey, if Nathan's signing in from somewhere that's too risky, maybe you shouldn't be able to access an ERP tool. Or maybe if you're signing in from somewhere that's okay, hey, that's okay too. But it's just you can use the analytics and the data that we have to then make an informed decision on what to do later on down the line in your target application. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of today's session. So thank you all for joining. If we didn't get to your question, then we'll be sure to follow up with you in the next couple of days. So a big thank you to you, Nathan, for joining us today. And a big thank you to you, Hennie. And if you do require any further information about what you've seen or what you've heard today, then please reach out and feel free to get in touch. So thanks all for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month at our next webinar. Thanks, guys.